I'm just waiting.
So we got we're back. We're going to touch on
the Arizona Cardinals.
We're going to touch on NFC West. We got the Arizona Cardinals. What do you think about them post draft? Right now, they from what I saw, they drafted a lot of defensive players to try and maybe be more competitive overall. But the number 2 pick that they got, number 49, Rondale Moore, should bring in some value to go alongside DeAndre Hopkins. Do you think he's a wide receiver 2 on that team or a wide receiver 3 behind Christian Kirk?
Yeah, most definitely. Wide receiver 3. I mean, Arizona, ever since Cliff Kingsbury's come into that offense, they run a 4 wide receiver set. That's what he likes to run. That's what he ran in college. He likes to get the ball out quick when he can. So most of the time, they've drafted some wide receivers in the past. Some of them maybe have not panned out as well as they thought they were going to be. Andy Isabella is one of those guys. So like it just hasn't turned out as well. But I'm not surprised they drafted a wide receiver. I'm a little surprised they drafted one the size, because really what they're looking for, I think they basically have like 2 slot guys and then 2 deep guys. And maybe he becomes one of those slot guys. I know with Larry Fitzgerald retiring and stuff, Christian Kirk will move into the slot. Christian Kirk's another guy like 5'11", got a lot of speed. DeAndre Hopkins, they can move him all over the place, but most likely he's their deep threat guy. He's that that wide receiver that he's going to go get the ball. He's got great hands. So we'll see I'm interested in where they're going to put him. I would think they would put him in another slot type receiver, being smaller like that, similar to Christian Kirk. But they used Christian Kirk on the outside last year when Larry Fitzgerald was in the slot. So, I mean, they could keep him out there and move Rondale Moore in the slot. I don't know, but I thought I heard that they were going to move Christian Kirk in the slot, and that's kind of where he will succeed, I think. So I'm not surprised they take him. The defense, I could see, them taking a lot of defensive pieces, trying to, get that. I think their offense was the problem. It was more on the defensive side, even though they look good at times,
Yeah, they had a better defense than some teams had bad offenses.
Yes. But they did lose. They did lose some of those pieces. Patrick Peterson is no longer there in as a safety, so they're trying to get younger and rebuild in that aspect.
All right, so let's go through some of their pieces real quick. Tell me where you feel like they could land in terms of fantasy value. We're going to start with Kyler Murray, quarterback.
Well, I mean, Kyler Murray is a guy, I liked him coming out of college. I thought he was going to be good. I think he took some big steps last year. He looked great. He had for the first like 7-8 weeks, he had an injury. After the knee injury, you started seeing him go, like he wasn't rushing as much. You saw Kenyon Drake take a lot of those goal line work instead of where Kyler had been rushing a lot of, because a lot of people were upset drafting Drake last year because Kyler was taking away a lot of his goal line work. You saw the injury happen. Drake gets back. I think Drake ended up with 10 rushing touchdowns on the year, which saved his fantasy value. But I think you're going to see some similar in Kyler. I think he's got a great arm. He is a little undersized. He's not a Josh Allen guy, which is they're very similar. They both can run when they need to. They both have big arm potential. I do think Kyler is a little more accurate than Josh Allen is. So I actually have big things for Kyler. Right now, he's my third quarterback. I'm not going to put him above Josh Allen. This time next year, if we're talking about him possibly being the number 1 quarterback in fantasy, I would not be surprised. Giving him another year, D-Hop coming over there in the offseason, they didn't even have a time to really connect. They kind of went as, he's going to be fine as long as you give him the ball, but you get a year under their belt. You've got Christian Kirk now moving into different areas, which he might be better than Larry Fitzgerald. It's hard to say that because Larry Fitzgerald was so good, but you put a small guy like him in the slot, I mean, he can be better. And I think it sucks they lost Kenyon Drake, but I think overall the offensive pieces are coming together. I think Chase Edmonds fits that offense with Kyler Murray a little bit better. So I expect high things, big things from Kyler Murray.
Gotcha. So what I'm gathering is that you consider Kyler Murray to be an elite quarterback, one of the top four. And once you get to the top four, guarantees kind of go out the window.
Sure.
Because you talk about floors and ceilings and whatnot, and maybe not as high of a floor as say as Josh Allen.
I think sky's the limit, though. I really do. Like I really think that Josh Allen. I think we saw what he can do, and we talked about that in another video. I think that's like, if that's the standard for him, that may be even the highest he's ever going to possibly be. We don't know. He could get better. Kyler Murray, we still haven't seen it, so there's room. The ceiling is a little bit higher. Where, like I said, he could be the number one guy at the end of the year, fantasy wise. I would not be shocked. Would not be shocked.
So let's touch on that with you attach Josh Allen with Stefan Diggs. You attach Kyler Murray right now with DeAndre Hopkins. That is the guy. How is he in terms of wide receiver choice?
Oh, no, I mean, listen, you're never going to go wrong with DeAndre Hopkins. I actually, I was a little nervous from a guy that was a DeAndre Hopkins owner, which I actually traded in the offseason. I was a little nervous because, going into a new system, you're not familiar. He's had Deshaun Watson and they had a connection, but I knew he was going to be good. I was just worried that they weren't going to be able to throw the ball as much as they like to. And they proved me wrong. I mean, DeAndre Hopkins got his share. He was the guy. We saw some of those huge games that they had together. I mean, that game-winning touchdown that against, forgive me, it may have been Seattle. I don't remember who it was, but he just chucked the ball down there. Had faith that DeAndre Hopkins was going to go up there and get it. He's such a tremendous receiver. You can really put him anywhere. In Houston, they kind of used him in the slot a little bit. They used him out wide. You can put him anywhere. He's really quarterback proof, is what I got from him last season, where they didn't have the offseason to really get together and really build a connection.
But now they have some time to build some chemistry and move forward. I guess my next with him, you would put him in the same general area as maybe a Devontae Adams, Stefan Diggs, Tyreek Hill. All these guys could end up in with a few good games, could all end up on top. A few bad games that could drop down a little bit, but for the most part, these are some of the elite guys.
Oh yeah, top five easily. I mean, I don't see him getting out of the top five. Like I could see Adams having a better season. I can see it. Well, take that back. If Rodgers is there, if Rodgers is not there, we're talking different,
right?
Yeah. Stephon Diggs, with the connection they have with Josh Allen, he is the true number one there. Same thing with Tyreek Hill. Those are the only three guys I would have above him. But again, if Kyler Murray, and maybe I should be higher on Hopkins, because if I think Kyler Murray can take that next step and be that elite quarterback, that guy that's that you're discussing could be over Josh Allen or whatever, then it's going to be with DeAndre Hopkins. So, maybe I'm talking myself into maybe putting DeAndre Hopkins a little higher. Right now, I'd still say I want Diggs above him. But hey, man, I mean, I could see it happening.
They're definitely investing in this receiving core. But one thing that we haven't seen, and maybe for Chase Edmonds fans, this is a good thing, but why the running back core looks a little thin right now.
Yeah.
Tell me what you think about that. Tell me where you feel who their running back one is going to be, and how many touches you feel they're going to get, because I have doubts about the upside of a guy like Chase Edmonds.
Sure. Well, I'll say this. I think for the they did sign James Conner. For the people that believe that maybe Chase Edmonds is going to be the guy, you actually, the way they drafted, they didn't draft a running back. So that tells me that they either like what they have and they think, hey, after Connor, he was our missing piece possibly. They like what they have there. So that's a boost of confidence in Chase Edmonds.
All right,
Look,
so Danny, what do you think about Arizona? Like, you've got Brady and I just talked about their fantasy. We just talked about that stuff. What are your thoughts?
this is a team that went extremely heavy drafting defensive players this year. And did they need to? Yes, they really did. But at the same time, they have still not figured out their running back situation. I still think they should have done more with their offensive line. They didn't do that. You have Hopkins, great wide receiver, but Murray is only 4'5" and cannot throw over his offensive line. You have JJ Watt, great pickup. The problem is too little, too late. He's too old. This is not a playoff contending team. Everyone says, oh, they're going to go to the Super Bowl. They are not. They are playing in the hardest division. They have to play against some top tier defensive lines. It's one of those things. A 4'5" quarterback cannot run from these guys. Aaron Donald will get him. Bosa will get him. The thing
Brady
is,
just said the statement that the Brady just kind of said, and let me give you his point of view. He said that that Kyler Murray was going to be a top 4 quarterback with QB1 potential. He said that Hopkins was going to be a top 4 wide receiver with he didn't think he was going to be wide receiver 1, but he definitely was going to be up there. He said other than that, they don't really have a whole lot of value on their team that he can trust.
that's the thing is, I mean, would I consider Arizona's defense? No, that just really no. I mean, you have almost a whole rookie secondary that you got to depend on. I'm not sold on Murray. I mean, he puts up good numbers. Is he someone worth drafting? Yeah. He's going to get the numbers for you, but he's not going to be a top 5 quarterback. And Hopkins is more of a deep threat for this team than, being that guy in Houston that you could throw the ball to him every 10 yards and let him go. They're using Hopkins more for the deep threat. In fantasy sports and the way the NFL is going, you're going to be lucky if he gets 4 or 5 receptions guaranteed a game. He might have a good game where he gets 11, but that's the thing is he's only looking at 4, maybe 5. And when you break down the other teams that have faster, smaller guys that can do the routes, get open, and then go for the yards after catch, you're talking about Cooper Kupp, Stephon Diggs, A.J. Brown, Allen Robinson, Keenan Allen. I mean, there's so many other wide receivers out there that I think are going to produce more and better than Hopkins this year.
Heard. All right. Disagreements abound about the Arizona Cardinals, but great takes on both points. All right, let's move on to the next team real quick. All right. So we were moving on to the Seattle Seahawks with the NFC West. We got Danny in the mouth here. Danny, what do you think about how Seattle's looking after the draft for the for the new year for 2021? Where are there going to be in quarterbacks? They really haven't changed much, right?
No, they're exactly the same team as last year. And we saw Wilson running for his life, getting put on his back constantly because the offensive line's not there. And on top of that, Wilson was like, hey, I wouldn't mind getting out of here unless you guys make life easier on me. And then you look at their draft, what'd they do? They had 3 picks, and they picked up a wide receiver in the 2nd round, Dwayne from Western Michigan. Why are you drafting a wide receiver that early when your first pick that you have in this draft? You have Lockett and Metcalf. You didn't need another wide receiver. You need someone on that line to protect Wilson, because if you don't, he gone. And then your 2nd pick was in the 4th round. You get a corner. Yeah, you needed a new corner, but still, you're not protecting your guy. You pick up an offensive lineman in the 6th round. And guess what? Stone Forsythe, and I'm going to read this off to you. He is 6'8", 307 pounds. Guess what? My son's an offensive lineman in high school. He's a freshman. He's almost the same exact stats on this guy. He's only a few inches shorter. You're telling my son is going to protect Russell Wilson? No. What are you thinking, Seattle? You are running the risk of getting your star quarterback, your franchise quarterback, injured, and you're not going to improve at all. You're going to run the risk of leaving him out there to where he's going to want to leave Seattle, and you're going to be in the same situation. A barely 500 team, barely over 500. Just
okay. Your son's 5'8", just an FYI, and he's about 215 pounds. But so the stats aren't quite the same. He's about a foot shorter and about 100 pounds less. But I don't know that that's going to be able to protect Russell Wilson on the 6th round pick. The issue is, though, they're not a change team, and everybody's caught on to what they're doing. I think they're in for a tough season next season.
Oh yeah, definitely. And here's the thing is, the other 3 teams in the NFC West did something this year in the offseason to improve. The Rams did, the 49ers did, the Arizona Cardinals did. All 3 of those teams did something to be better than what they were last year. This was the toughest division in the NFL last year. Seattle, you dropped the ball. Enjoy last place.
Last place in division. So let's talk about their fantasy value. And it doesn't drop off completely. I mean, Russell Wilson's still a draftable quarterback, but I don't think he's a top 5 guy anymore.
Absolutely not. And this is the thing is he someone worth drafting? Yeah, he's worth drafting, but low end. Then you know what you're going to get with him. Either he's going to be hot in the beginning of the season and then die off at the end, or he's going to start slow and then pick it up towards the end of the season. So do you risk, drafting him and seeing which Wilson you get at the beginning of the year? Then, if he's bad at the beginning of the year, you can put him on the bench and then wait till the midway point and then start playing him. But if he starts playing hot at the beginning of the year, you better plan on trading him by week 5 so you can get something for him, or you're going to be stuck at the end of the season in fantasy sitting out on the playoffs because you're not going. And if you, by a remote chance, make it to the playoffs, you're a first-round exit.
Yeah, I recommend if you have a Russell Wilson, not being someone that's drafted Russell Wilson in the past, because I like Russell Wilson to an extent. I think he can win games for you, but he can also lose games for you. And I recommend getting another guy of a mid-level, maybe a little bit more even playing style that can do something for you. And it's at that point, guys like Joe Burrow, that's going to be a mid-round guy right now. He's going to be a sneaky good player. You could still probably get, a Daniel Jones who could do better this season. Who knows? But having a backup plan for when Russell Wilson just isn't delivering is a good idea. Tyler Lockett is a great guy to have with Russell Wilson when Russell Wilson is doing well. But you also need to almost treat him like a very high cost flex player, because he's going to play when Russell Wilson's playing great. When Russell Wilson's playing poor, you need to bench him because he's going to deliver zero value. Do you agree, Danny?
Yeah, and same with Metcalf. These are really high quality receivers, but the thing is, if Wilson doesn't have time to throw the ball, and we saw that last year towards the end of the season, because towards the end of the season, they were really getting into the meat of their schedule playing against their divisional teams. And those other 3 teams have awesome, and I mean awesome defensive lines. And in fact, the Cardinals made theirs better in the offseason. So it's one of those things. When you look at the NFC West, those guys play each other about the midpoint, maybe the first quarter of the season, and then they play at the end. And that's where you're going to see Wilson's value drop, which is going to mean Lockett, Metcalf are going to drop. And then
I think Metcalf. Go ahead. I do think Metcalf has a higher floor than Lockett does. I think he can catch more of those passes a little bit closer. He's a little bit stronger, less prone to injury than Lockett is. So if you are drafting one higher, I think Metcalf's a good choice. But right now, in terms of fantasy pros, he's drafted at, the late first round or the early teens Right. And he was good, but I don't know that I trust him to be, I don't trust him as my wide receiver 1 right now. I trust him as a high-end wide receiver 2.
To me, I don't even go that far. I'd say low end wide receiver 2, strong flex. But you also got to look at this way too. You have to play the matchups. And when they're going to be playing the Los Angeles Rams, the San Francisco 49ers, the Arizona Cardinals, you might want to consider benching all of the Seattle offensive players on your team because it's going to be hard for them to be productive. There is no offensive lineman there. I mean, heck, I weigh more than that guy they drafted, Forsythe. I am only a few inches shorter than him. You're telling me I can play in the NFL? Come on, bro.
So if you had the opportunity to say, I'm going to give a few players with Metcalf, because again, Metcalf's he ended up a top 8 wide receiver I think it was number 6 last season as a wide receiver 6. Would you draft, say, I'm going to give you a few guys sooner or afterward? Allen Robinson, where would you put him? Draft before or after Allen Robinson?
See, that one's tough because I would love to take Robinson in front of him just because this man deserves to be in the Hall of Fame for what he has produced in his NFL career with no quarterback.
Right.
I mean, legitimately, he's had no quarterback, and it's honestly a matter of who Chicago's going to go with. Are they going to start Dalton or are they going to go with Fields? And Fields has some mechanical issues he needs to fix.
Mm-hmm.
Right now, I would honestly probably take him afterwards just because of the quarterback issues in Chicago.
So that kind of answers a lot because you're putting him right by there. A lot of people have him way higher than that. They have, Keenan Allen. Where do you have him in relation to these guys?
I have Allen above Metcalf, and the reason I say that, he has a beautiful quarterback down there, Justin Herbert. I have a man crush on this guy, and he doesn't even play for my team. But I've said it last year, and I'm going to say it again. That draft class of quarterback, Herbert came out. I said he was going to be the best quarterback in that draft class. He looked phenomenal last year. He has an offensive line. He has a bunch of other weapons. Allen's going to have a really good year. I would even venture to say Allen's going to be a Pro Bowler this year.
And so you hear it here. Danny the Mouth says that Metcalf is not going to be a wide receiver 1 value player. He's going to be a wide receiver 2 tier player, mid-level at best. It's actually an interesting take. He has a lot of evidence to support it. We're going to see how that goes, guys. Let's just move on real quick. All right, so we've got Danny the Mouth here chatting about the San Francisco 49ers. We have the NFC West that we're discussing right now. The 49ers went from being in the Super Bowl to basically going through the 2020 season injured, hurt, issue after issue after issue. Only to follow it with the offseason that we've just started, trading multiple positions to get to the 3rd round, to the number 3 pick, so they get Trey Lance, which they could have probably just sat around and waited and had him at pick 6, 7, or 8 easily. There has been drama. They've lost their defensive coordinator to the Jets, who is now their head coach. His name is eluding me right now, but quality guy. We'll talk about the Jets, a different part in this video. But Danny, tell me about the fantasy relevance of the 49ers. Tell me how you feel they're going to, what is the 2021 season predict what does Danny Mouth predict for 2021?
You know what? I absolutely hate the 49ers. They are the one team I hate the most in the NFL. When they lose, I love it. But the thing is, this team is in such a mess. And
do you hate Joe Montana, Jerry Rice, the whole deal?
Yes. And I've met Joe Montana, and I told him I hate him. If
Nobody
you
hates
would've
Joe
noticed,
Montana. Who hates Joe Montana?
I do, because they won so much in the 80s.
I have a Jerry Rice rookie card.
Oh man, no. I hate them. That's how bad I hate them. I've even told Joe Montana I hate him. A lot of respect for him though. But this is a good mess, is what I would say is going on there. Yeah, they lost their defense coordinator, but they have their defensive pieces still there, and that was a really good defense. And you got Sherman, who's out of there. Richard Sherman's gone. Mm-hmm. They picked up a new corner in the 5th round. I'm not really sold on Lenore, but he is coming out of a good school in Oregon, but Oregon's really never been known for their defense. So I'm not 100% sure. I'm not drinking that Kool-Aid yet, because you took him in the 5th round. You know, also looking at, this is a team that is setting themselves up for the future. They're not setting themselves up for 2021. Trey Lance is not ready to be a starting quarterback in the NFL.
Right. And probably going to be Garoppolo for a while.
And we saw how Jimmy G is. I mean, he's not the best starting quarterback in the NFL. And by what I mean that way is, he's not someone that can do what the San Francisco 49ers want to do. They want to go deep, be fast. There's nothing fast about Jimmy G other than him being on a magazine. Now, here's another thing that I like what the 49ers did. If I'm running that team, they picked up offensive linemen. They picked up a guard in Banks from Notre Dame in the 2nd round. They also picked up Moore from Western Michigan in the 5th round. So you're building your offensive line. And I've always said it. I don't care. People say linemen are unskilled position. They are worth their weight in gold. That's what wins you championships, both sides of the football. And when they're drafting offensive linemen, that tells me they're ready to protect their quarterback. They might not be looking to protect Jimmy G, but they want to make sure Lance is protected when he does get in there. The other thing is, they picked up 2 more running backs. They picked up Trey Sermon from Ohio State. Not totally sold on him, but hey, you picked up another running back for your committee. And then in their last pick, in the 6th round, they picked up Eli Mitchell from Louisiana Lafayette. Look, I can't tell you much about that kid. I didn't get to watch him. You know, I don't think anyone really watches Louisiana Lafayette. But, hey, you know what? They run a committee running back system there. We'll see how it goes. But they picked up more legs, which is something that has worked well for them, even though I hate it, because when it comes down to fantasy, you can't take a running back from a team that runs a committee. You ain't getting nothing. You might have 1 week where you get 20 points because they scored all the touchdowns, and then the following week you're getting 0 to 1.
All right. But, so right now, what we got, just kind of move forward on this. Yeah, that's some great stuff. But running backs, would you draft any of them as running back 1, 2, or flex at this point?
Absolutely not. I am not touching any running back coming out of the San Francisco 49ers.
Would you grab one maybe as to stash a low level on a bench, just to say, okay, I have a guy in case somebody gets injured? You just leave it on the waiver wire.
Leave them on the wire. And the way I look at the running back situation in San Francisco is like the last 10 years in New England. You will get hurt if you get a running back from New England. You're going to get hurt if you get a running back from San Francisco. You will be trying to get a lawyer and trying to get compensation for the way you've been hurt by these running backs.
All right, let's talk about defense, because a lot of times San Francisco has had a valuable defense in the in fantasy. It's usually one of the better ones. Are they going to be back to old form? Even last year, they weren't terrible as a defense; they just couldn't score points. Would you draft them as your defense in fantasy, you know, or do you just want to just sit around and say, okay, you know what, let somebody else deal with that?
You know what? I know someone last year drafted that defense with their 2nd pick, which was absurd.
We all agree that you don't draft defenses with premium picks, right? Okay, let's move forward. Yeah.
But I will say this. If I'm in, you know, the later rounds, 10, 11, 12, 13, and they're there, I will take them. And here's the thing is, that defensive line is solid. The linebacking core is okay. And the secondary was probably the worst part of their team last year. And they're making, they're trying to replace the guys they lost and make that secondary better. They drafted 2 corners and a safety. So it's one of those things. There's enough young talent coming in. These guys are coming from Power 5 conferences. You're coming out of Michigan. You're coming out of Oregon. You're coming out of USC. These are Power 5 conferences. That means most of these wide receivers they went up against got either drafted to the NFL or will be drafted to the NFL. So it's one of those things. There's a skill set there. You have to acknowledge that the potential of them being as good as they were the year they went to the Super Bowl is there.
Cool. So you're comfortable drafting them as a higher end defense.
Correct.
Sure. Fantastic. Even without the defensive coordinator being there, you still feel like they got all the tools.
I think they have all the tools, and as long as they run the right schemes, they're going to be fine.
Cool.
I mean, it's one of those things, and you'll know fairly quick when there's going to be an issue.
Heard. All right, let's go on to the wide receivers. All right. Wide receivers have been pretty volatile traditionally with the San Francisco 49ers. That has a lot to do with the volatility of the quarterback position, which is Garoppolo. We don't really trust we agree that we don't trust the quarterback position right now for San Francisco. They're in a transition year with both of those. Would you draft their wide receivers, or would you stash a wide receiver there?
Honestly, no. And the reason I say that is there's far more wide receivers in the NFL right now that I would go after that I could depend on to fill in my wide receiver 1 and 2 spots. If I need another wide receiver for the flex, there's enough options out there with all the other teams. And it's just because Jimmy G hurts their value so much. The only receiver, and he's not even a wide receiver that I can say you can put your money on, is George Kittle. And that's because that's how bad Jimmy G is. He can't get it past, deep downfield to anyone else. It's to George Kittle almost, 70% of the time? I mean,
and Kittle gets most of his yards after the catch. That's good. So we could talk about, we could move on to tight end. And tight end, George Kittle is a premium position in power, right?
He is. And I mean, it was one of those things. We had a keeper league that we started a couple of years ago, and I picked George Kittle in that draft, and he would finish the season number 2. I won the championship. Trophies right here. And here it is. George Kittle had a great season, and he was one of my keepers. Well, I needed to make some moves if I wanted to get into the playoffs, so I traded him. And it broke my heart. I really didn't want to get rid of him, but I got rid of him at the right time. He got injured the week after I traded him, and I ended up winning this trophy for a second year in a row. So here it is. You have George Kittle's coming back from a really severe injury from last year. He's going to be the dump-off guy for Jimmy G. It's one of those things. To me, he is going to be fantasy gold. I can even say he probably outdo Travis Kelce this year in fantasy.
That's a gutsy statement, and it's very possible. I mean, even if Trey Lance ends up over there, they're going to start by showing him how to check down. That's a big deal for the 49ers. They do go run heavy. So Kittle is offense proof. He is more so as much as any tight end could be in the NFL. I don't know that he's going to beat Kelce. Saying that is big, but it's possible. But yeah, I think Kittle's going to be one of those premium, tier 1 tight ends, and as he has been in years past and for longevity. So I think that's what we got for San Francisco. And let's talk about the next one. All right. So we've been discussing the NFC West. We've got feelings about a lot. It's still going to be a tough division. But let's talk about the Rams. Let's talk about the LA Rams. Newly acquired quarterback, tough defense, quality wide receivers, just the full package. Danny the Mouth, tell me about the LA Rams.
Look, I'm going to start off. I've followed this team since I was a little boy growing up in Los Angeles. And first and foremost, the Rams need to change their uniforms. I just want to get that off my chest. Their whole changing the uniforms look like the Los Angeles Charger uniforms. God awful. Change the logo back. Anyways, here's the thing. I love what they did in the draft, and I hate what they did in the draft. And, they didn't go after any offensive linemen. And, you don't have a first-round pick. They're not going to have a first-round pick until 2024. Come on, man. You guys have quality wide receivers. You have a good running back. I love that you're trying to get more weapons in there, young talent. They drafted, 1, 2, 3 wide receivers in the draft this year. They got 2 more running backs. Great. And you picked up some small pieces for defense in the draft, even though you have a stacked defense as it is. The only thing that's going to change is you got a new defense coordinator in town, and hopefully to God he doesn't change it, because that defense was number 1 last year. I honestly do believe if Aaron Donald was 100% in that playoff game against the Packers, the Rams would have won that game and moved on. But when you look at the offense, let's just salivate over this offense. This is a freaking great offense. Matthew Stafford, 10 times better than Jared Goff. The only thing
so you're talking about QB Matt Stafford, 10 times better than Jared Goff. All right. What's he going to do in fantasy? How is that, and why is he going to be that much better?
It's one of those things. One, he's going to be a lot better going into the LA system versus Detroit, because one, he's going to have a better offensive line. That's something he has not had his entire career and has led to a lot of injuries. Now he's also going to have good running backs, something that Detroit has never had. And when they've gotten good running backs there, they've been at the end of their careers, and then they couldn't do anything because they didn't have an offensive line. Again, take care of your trenches if you want to win. Then you're also talking about better quality wide receivers. And I'm not trying to say anything bad about Megatron. These guys were good, but at the same time, you have multiple wide receivers that are fast, know how to run their routes, great hands, yards after catches, and you have one of the greatest offensive mindsets coaching you in Sean McVay. This team is primed to win the NFC, not West, the whole NFC. They should be in the Super Bowl.
What about the defense? Just going to add one more.
The defense is pretty much exactly the same as it was last year outside of the defensive coordinator. Now, we saw, and here's where coaching comes into play. This same defense was under Wade Phillips a couple of years ago, and they looked atrocious, giving up 30, 40, 50 points a game. Then you get rid of Phillips and, bring in a new guy. Hey, they look great. They're number 1. And the defensive line is second to none. You have the beast, Aaron Donald, on your defensive line. You got Jalen Ramsey in your secondary. This team should win straight out. They should go 17-0. Won't happen, but it's one of those things. This team is prime. This defense, this should be the first defense to come off of any fantasy league because it's that good. Will they be number 1 at the end of the year? Probably not. It's very rare that a team will finish number 1 back-to-back years, but they will be a top 4 defense. Promise you that.
They're deep enough, they're strong enough, and they're experienced enough to be a top 5 all season. And that's kind of a set it and forget it kind of situation, assuming that no crazy injuries and things happen. Obviously things happen, but I tend to agree with you about the defense. Matt Stafford, is he a top 10 quarterback in the league?
Yes, I would say he's going to be top 10. And as long as he learns the system quickly, which he's a veteran. I mean, he's been in the NFL for over 10 years now. He also played in the SEC down there in Georgia. It's one of those, he'll be okay. They'll make the system work for him because they shouldn't have to tweak it any. Because the thing is, Stafford's more of a pocket passer, just like Goff was, and Goff got into the Super Bowl. And you have a guy that has a better football IQ, has better arm, better accuracy. There is no reason why this team cannot make it to the Super Bowl this year. But I will say, their window to get there is very small. And the reason I say that is it's either boom or bust this year. You Super Bowl or hey, we're done. Because when you start breaking in the contracts, the finances, and all that, age of some of these players, their window is really small to get back to the Super Bowl.
Gotcha. Well, let's talk about the wide receivers real quick. Let's talk about Cooper Kupp. Let's talk about Robert Woods. And they did pick up a plethora of new wide receivers over the draft.
Look, Cooper Kupp has been gold for the last few years, and that's even with Jared Goff throwing to him. He has been in the top 10, almost every single season, even with Jared Goff in there. So it's one of those things. I mean, he's been fantasy gold. He plays that slot position better than anyone, and he just knows how to catch the ball and go. Woods has, I wasn't really sold on him a couple of years ago when they had Cook there. Cook's gone. Woods is that other guy. He's taken off. And I would even consider Reynolds as a flex option because he even proved that he can get going, and I have a feeling that Stafford is going to just spread that ball around and it's going to look beautiful.
So is your take that these guys are wide receiver 1 level in fantasy, or are they both wide receiver 2 level in fantasy?
I would say Cooper Kupp and Woods will be wide receiver 1. You can't go wrong. And if you get lucky and you can get them both, you are doing awesome. Because even with how good some of the defenses are in the NFC West, the Rams have always played well against those division rivals. They don't put a whole lot of points up, but they do move the ball. And that was with Jared Goff, one of the stupidest quarterbacks to ever play in the NFL, getting them the ball. Imagine what a smart, good veteran will do in Matthew Stafford.
Now as you can tell, Danny has zero bias toward the Rams right now. I cannot hear it at all in his predictions and his thought process. That stated, I definitely see the optimism for the team, but we didn't discuss, to me, what maybe the most exciting player that's coming on that came on toward the end of last season, and should be, to me, their running back 1 going into the next season, which is Cam Akers.
Cam Akers had a phenomenal finish, and I wish I would have given him more time. I drafted him last year in a few of my leagues, and he didn't have too much production in the first few weeks, and I let him go, and I regretted it. I should have kept him. But it was one of those things, when you look at the Rams, they don't run it as a committee when it comes to running backs, but there's the flavor of the week.
A hot hand, huh?
And when they have a guy that they truly trust and want to roll with, like they did a couple of years ago with Gurley, and that was even with Sean McVay, they will use him up. But I think Sean McVay has got cold feet with his running backs after what happened the year they went to the Super Bowl. They used up Todd Gurley all season to get that number 1 spot in the playoff. And then when you got to the playoffs, Gurley wasn't 100%. They barely used him in the Super Bowl. They lost 10 to 3. It was 10-3. So it's one of those things. I mean, I think Sean's going to be a little gun shy to have Akers out there all the time. You're going to get production. I would say he's more of an RB2 in fantasy. If you have to put him as an RB1, you're still not going to hurt too bad. But
you might need to be a little bit patient with a guy like Cam Akers. He may not produce the first few weeks, but don't give up on him possibly, because when he goes off, he'll keep going off.
Here's one way to prove that. The year after the Rams went to the Super Bowl, Todd Gurley barely got any action in the beginning of the season. They hardly used him, and the Rams lost a lot of games. And then towards the end of the season, the Rams were trying to make that final push to try to make the playoffs, which they didn't. But that's when they started using Todd Gurley a lot. And Todd Gurley's production went up. It was almost like, hey, we're not going to play you that much in the first 6-7 weeks. But after that, we're going to ramp up and you're going to go balls to the wall. And I have a feeling you're going to see the same thing with Akers. And I think that was the whole reason why they ended up drafting 2 running backs this year. Have those guys pick up a little bit of the load, so he'll be fresh towards the end of the season to make that good playoff push, and then get into the playoffs and make that run for the Super Bowl again.
Heard. All right. High hopes for the Rams. Any thoughts about tight ends, or you think that they're kind of you don't even know who the tight end one's going to be at this point?
You really don't. I mean, here's the thing: is Higbee had a real good year in 2019. In 2020, he almost disappeared. He had a few good weeks, but he wasn't that. At the end of 2019, he came on. He was up there with Kittle and Kelsey. Someone you could even possibly even think about it as a keeper in a keeper league. And then 2020, injuries, but he just wasn't a factor as much as he was at the end of 2019.
For me, and I don't know if you felt this, but I felt like they almost played Cooper Kupp and gave him those. Almost he played him from time to time like another tight end. Where he had a lot of blocking.
And see, the Rams have gone to what's called a 3 tight end set, and I mean it's one of those things. It works great for them. They have a good system, but the thing is, I'm not sold on their tight ends. When you come down to Higbee, which should be their number 1 tight end as far as receptions and all that, I'm just not sold that the Rams are going to keep him in that role. And
Gotcha.
It's a crapshoot finding out which tight end is going to get the ball.
Heard. All right, so let's nice, succinct, good way of looking at it. Talk about the Rams again soon. Looking forward to finding out more on the off season. But thank you for joining us. We look forward to seeing you again next time for the Royal Fumblers. Like and subscribe down below. See you soon after kickoff.